Thank you for visiting this limited series. The infection was initially mild, my small town city council run, the toxic American pandemic response, and what both mean for the future of the country, written by Heather Christina Schmidt. You can view the entire series now on schmidttalks.com or subscribe to get it sent in parts to your email box weekly.
Every fall or early winter, late in the year, it begins to cool in Southern California, and eventually it rains. Most years it's been so dry that even the slightest bit of rain becomes an epic event. What I always notice about the first big rain, sometimes it is no more than a spit, and that's all we get for the season, is that immediately after, the subterranean termites come out in a swarm. Subterranean termites are these little termites that are white and translucent. They don't do damage like the termites that rot your attic, but they are annoying nevertheless. What I always notice is that there are just so many of them. One day you'll be enjoying the first rain of the season, and the next you can't even look outside without seeing clouds of them in swarms, just flying around. Flying for the sake of flying. Existing for the sake of existing. One year, so many of them came up from underground that they also died in droves. They got stuck in window sills, smashed over the front of my black SUV so that it looked grayish-white from a distance, and the ground was covered in their translucent wings so you heard a crunch and a squish, turning the wings into a translucent goo stuck on the bottom of your shoes. It was a sight of horror, one forgotten as quickly as they resurface until the next first rain of the season. People in politics, in every fashion, are like those subterranean termites. They come out only at certain moments of the year. They fly around in swarms, and infest every open space they can, leaving behind trails of translucent, gooey wings, and the scent of infestation. Politicos, from politicians and elect heads, to commentators, bloggers, and volunteers, are like annoying gnats on the ass of America. Few have any redeeming qualities, and they appear to exist for no reason but for the sake of themselves. Flying for the sake of flying. Existing for the sake of existing. The subterranean termites come to the surface. The city council in my city is perhaps synonymous with any other governing body in America. They are clueless, do very little, and understand even less. Our city council is pretty typically made up of any handful of your garden variety locals. There is usually at least one self-professed businessman, whose business is a bit nebulous and sounds more like a Ponzi scheme. A lawyer is always smattered in there somewhere, since lawyers notoriously possess the cut-throated narcissism required to be a politician, and because voters tend to assume that someone who knows how to manipulate the law will also be good at running the city. Our city has a hard-on for small business, as many cities do. So there are two businessmen and one businesswoman on our council presently. The men are like pieces of Wonder Bread, sort of blending into the chamber walls with their weak-willed comments, and hangers-on status. One was up for re-election the same year that I ran, only in a different district, and he acted surprised when my daughter gave him a Halloween treat bag at the farmer's market. Even for an opponent? He asked, to which she had to remind him that he wasn't even in the same district as me. The other, he seems harmless, and I don't mean that in a good way. The woman, whom my youngest called Grandma whenever he saw her on the screen during a meeting, has been there since the 80s. She's taken turns being mayor just shy of 10 times, 8, to be precise, and, as with the men, most of us remain unclear what business she's actually in besides grifting the taxpayer dollar. There are also the occasional politicos that come and go on the council. These are the people that parrot party lines, like Black Lives Matter, and vote blue no matter who. Of course neither of those phrases, in the typical election year, would even remotely be tolerated in this community, and yet somehow, someway, one of them managed to get on the council. She's up for re-election this year, and if I'm reading the pulse of the city right now, she will be a one-hit wonder in terms on the dais. The shocking part about her is that in a pandemic, as a nurse, I cannot think or find evidence of a single thing she's actually done for the public health aspect of it. Even today, into the third year of this collective nightmare we are all living through, I watched recently a video of a council meeting in which she was wearing a loose-fitting, inappropriately layered, mask at the meeting. A nurse. A person who is supposed to know things like how to wear a mask, and what type of a mask to wear. Someone who was touted as exactly who we wanted to be there during the pandemic. She effectively did nothing for public health education, vaccination or testing efforts, and everything in between. I believe, and this is just my own personal belief, that this comes more from the cronyism that is pervasive to our community, and as it turns out in the bigger political picture. Hand-picked successors are everywhere. When a council member either terms out or retires, there is always someone that has a familiar name and face that's been waiting in the wings to pick up the position. This can be done traditionally, with an actual vote of the people, that comes from hefty funding and a lot of local name recognition, or, more often, when someone leaves in the middle of the term, and the council or board or whatever convinces the public that it is more financially responsible to shun the voices of voters, and let the all-knowing remaining electeds select their new colleague. My community has no shortage of either. Decades ago, one of the area's congressmen died suddenly and tragically, and in the special election his wife ran for and won the seat. The funny part of that was that when you polled most of the voters in the district, they were both unaware it was her, and not the dead husband, and didn't even have a grip on when regular elections were supposed to be held, and just voted when told to. On the more local level, we had a county supervisor on the board for decades, before the county finally gave in to the will of the voters and instituted term limits, and someone totally and completely ideologically opposed, though sharing the last name, got enough money from local oil and natural gas companies to plaster enough name recognition pieces around the community that she was elected in a landslide. This county representative, now in a re-election, has no more than bananas for brains, and will blow whichever way her biggest donors sway her. I can only assume the air between her ears helps with the flight. Often she harms the community with her total cluelessness, and subsequent harmful, at times dangerous, policies. Most people in the community, though, still think they're voting for the last lady. On the flip side are the institutional cronies that are in just enough local groups, and have been around the political scene long enough, to simply step onto the stage the moment an opportunity presents itself for them to do so. Oftentimes, it is so glaring when it happens you can't help but be insulted that these people, this pack of cronies deciding everything from what roads are repaved, to which books our children in the public schools learn from, think we are both blind and dumb. Perhaps, since we go along with it, we are. In the last couple of years, the real offenders were the ones who knew they wouldn't serve their term. One school board member had already contracted a move, but notified the public only after she was re-elected. This allowed the school board to handpick her successor, again after reminding the public that this was the fiscally responsible thing to do. Nothing gets your average community member like the idea that their tax dollars are being wasted, even if it comes at the expense of the authoritarianism. Make no mistake about it, handpicking successors is exactly that. Another school board member in recent years died of a terminal cancer she knew she had and kept secret through her re-election. Again she was replaced by installment. 2 city council members that same year met the same exalted status locally, when seats open only after other council members won higher office. Of course we could have municipal laws that prohibit a candidate from running for office while holding another that would require them to resign, leaving the path open for this kind of malfeasance at schools boards and city halls all over the country. This would at least eliminate some. We could also end the ability for installment, and require special elections under all circumstances. But this brand of local authoritarianism is kind of what the whole game is about, making sure that only the people in office can decide who else is there with them.
Keep going to continue. The infection was initially mild, my small town city council run, the toxic American pandemic response, and what both mean for the future of the country, written by Heather Christina Schmidt, or come back next week for the next installation on schmidttalks.com. Thank you to our sponsors, and subscribers like you. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay aware.